My guest today is a remarkable man who faced a diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2017 and talks about his personal journey dealing with the illness. It takes a lot of courage and positivity to come on and talk so openly about these things, and Mitch certainly has both in spades. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. All right, I think we are good. Mitch Vanderhagen, how are you doing today?
Good, man.
Good.
Yeah, doing well. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I can't really complain. I'm glad I finally had a chance to get you in the studio here.
You bet. It's an honor and privilege.
Well, I was going to say that towards the end. But yeah, so, I mean, how was your weekend? What all did you do?
Weekend was good. Actually stayed local. I had a buddy turn 30.
Oh, wow.
So we went out downtown, did the whole Mass Ave thing.
Yeah.
And it was good to just spend time with close friends that I grew up with. We had about
really
12 of us, so it was pretty neat.
Oh, my God. So you guys
Yeah.
are kind of roving the streets of downtown
That's right.
Indianapolis.
It's been a while. I'm not one that goes out much, so it was a rarity.
Yeah.
But fun nonetheless.
That's awesome, man. So I guess, really, what is it that when you're not going down and partying in downtown Indianapolis, what is it that you do for fun, really?
So fun.
That strange foreign concept of fun.
Yeah, I guess it is. I don't really live in a world of fun. No, but I mean, going out, I don't do as much anymore. But I guess where I find fun and is just spending time with friends and family.
Yeah.
And staying active. I mean, obviously we met in the gym, and
Right.
I have fun doing that. Right, moving around, whether it's taking a class in there, or it's lifting, it's running, or it's being outside, biking, kayaking. That's fun to me, where I can move around, enjoy the outdoors, and just and people. So that's kind of where I find my happiness.
That resonates a lot with me because I feel like, for me, working out and being at the gym is almost like this form of, this sounds kind of corny, but almost like meditation for me in
Yeah.
a weird way, where it's like I could just be focused on me, myself, my inner thoughts, and just kind of, if I have an issue or a problem that maybe I'm trying to work through, it seems like I always have some sort of breakthrough. Like, halfway through
Exactly.
the work. I don't know what it is about working out that is so conducive to problem solving or figuring just stuff out. It's fantastic for me.
Yeah, I think it's just purging it out, right? Getting your mind clear. I get an endorphin rush, right? Which
Yeah.
is your mind's clear as all get out, and then you can make good decisions and you feel good. So it sounds like you experience some of the same stuff I do.
Yeah. Have you always been into fitness? Because I got into it pretty late, well, I say late, but in the middle of my 20s. So it wasn't really, it was something that's been kind of foreign to me for the majority of my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up playing sports, so I've always
Right.
been pretty active. And then after this whole health situation, I've kind of stepped it up a notch.
Yeah.
And have made it more of a lifestyle than in the past. But it's always kind of been a part of my life.
So what kind of sports did you play growing up?
I was a basketball and football player.
Of course, you're a
Yeah.
tall guy.
Yep.
Yeah. What are you, 6'6", 6'7"?
A little less, so 6'4".
Okay.
Yep.
Very
And
cool.
enjoyed all that.
That's awesome. I started doing this intermittent fasting stuff, and I kind of bought into the meme of it. And I get really gung-ho about stuff. So I started off doing like the 16 hours off, 8 hours on, and then nowadays, and I don't even know if this is healthy or not, but I eat one big meal. That's it. Like, it's usually around dinner time. Like, especially when I'm working on an episode here, I'll record an episode, and then I'll dive into the studio, and I'll spend all day, 8 hours editing it, and coming up with the next stuff for managing social media accounts, booking other guests or whatnot. And I just don't get that hungry. I straight up power through it. I just have that one big meal. I'm not even sure if that's healthy at all.
Now, was it like that at the beginning?
No,
and then
no.
you've kind of
Oh.
eased your way into that.
Yeah, so what I was doing is gradually extending that hour, because I used to do from noon until 8, I would be able to eat.
Yeah.
That was my feeding window, or I guess whatever they call it, in intermittent fasting. But I gradually was either eating earlier or pushing it back. either like wrapping up eating before 8 or like starting to eat after 12 a little bit. So I would play with it because I couldn't do that kind of dramatic change all at once.
Yeah.
It's hard, but
it sounds like it.
it gets easier. But you're a pretty fit guy, so I mean, do you do any of that sort of stuff? Like
I haven't. Now I've heard of that. My dad's tried it, and he's a big believer, and I know people get great results from it. Haven't done any really type of fasting. I know it's good for your digestive system and your stomach, and but I mean, as far as like a diet for me, I stick to I've gone away with dairy. It kind of bothered,
Really?
bothered my stomach a little bit, so I've gone away without that. I do carbs once a day. There was a time where I went completely without it, and I didn't have much energy. So I tried to be cognizant of eating, bread and pasta, and I'm big into veggies and fruit.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not like it doesn't have a name for it, but I've read about different ones, and I've kind of, I guess, formulated my own, and it's worked for me.
It seems like it is working for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. One of the reasons why I wanted to have Mitch on was because I remember him telling me and I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to hog the spotlight from him, but he has a very remarkable, motivating story. And I asked him if he'd be interested in coming on and sharing some of his experiences with that, some of his mindset. And he was gung-ho about it. He was all for it. And I'm really just excited to have you kind of dive in and really just kind of open up about what you went through, because I understand you haven't told, like, I guess on a big scale or anything like this before.
I mean, I don't actively throw it out on social media or talk about it, but if somebody's talking about something they're going through or they ask about it, I'm certainly open. So when my name got called, anytime I could help influence somebody or somebody can point to it and say, I can relate to that, or there's something they said that'll help me, right, I'm all on board. So I'm excited, and hopefully some of the stuff we talk about resonates with some of the listeners. And, so I'm excited.
That's awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into it. What is your story? Why are you on here? I mean, what really kind of brought you in our path, I guess?
Yeah, so I know we spoke briefly. I forget where it was in the gym, and it kind of came up, right? So in 2017, even I guess before that, I was going through, I was having different symptoms, and I guess I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. Some of those being, like my stool was changing, and I just didn't feel right. Some days I'd legitimately feel out of it, and I thought, man, there's something going on, or potentially. And then I would say, it could be stress related. And so I went and saw a GI doctor, and they kept saying, hey, you're kind of worked up. I'm in sales, so it's constantly up and down. But I had never felt that way before in stress, so they kind of continued to monitor it. And then some other stuff started to happen. I guess one being I was having these like heart attacks in the middle of the night. I later to find out there was a bunch of lymph nodes in my chest, but I would go to sleep and I would wake up and I'd almost have 911 dialed on the phone. I mean, it was like pain. It would paralyze me, my back, and I would take 2 Advil, and then like 3 minutes and it would completely go away. So it was like one end of the spectrum to like the complete opposite.
Oh my God.
And I was like, man, I don't know if this is something I'm eating, like acid reflux or GERD or what exactly this is, but this is kind of another thing that piques my attention that I bring to the GI doc. So we got a couple things going on. Then they monitor me again, and I go in, and I'm starting to lose weight. And so he continues to keep saying, hey, I think that there's some stress. Maybe you need to change your diet a little bit. And so at a certain point, I was like, hey, we need to kind of move on to something else. And then I started getting the night sweat. So I was waking up, and the bed was completely wet because I was sweating just severely. And I went in, I saw another doctor. I went to an autoimmune doctor, and they looked at my blood work, and they said, hey, there's something going on here. There's some inflammation. You're anemic, so you're losing blood somewhere. You're going to need to go to a primary doctor. So I wasn't real familiar with anything in medicine that you need to go to kind of a primary doctor, and then they kind of determine where you go from there. I was just kind of in a panic, like, hey, something with my stomach, I'll go to a GI. So it could be an autoimmune, I'll go to an autoimmune, and that's evidently not the way to do it. But I finally got steered in the direction of a primary doctor. Then they dug into the blood work a little bit more, and he's kind of looked at me and said, hey, there's some serious stuff going on. And then the symptoms even got worse where I was losing like iron in my legs. So it was hard to like walk up a flight of stairs. I mean, I could certainly walk, and then I would be completely gassed after any type of, physical activity. So as I finally got speaking to him, the primary doc, and then like the symptoms even getting worse, it kind of started to kind of become real that there's something serious going on. This isn't just some stress thing. And so after that, right, he said, we're going to need to take some scans. And this could be something serious. So I just want to prepare you for that. I said, okay. So we got all the scans. I was doing some research on the side of what my symptoms could be. And when he looked at me and said it could be serious, this is kind of when things got a little bit real. And when I left his office, he walked down the hall and he turned around to me. I'll never forget this. And he said, who's the most emotional person in your family? I said, well, my mom's a little bit more emotional than my dad. And he goes, I would suggest having a kind of a conversation with your dad, the least emotional one, about this kind of being something fairly serious. We never dropped the C word or any of that. Yeah. And then I called my dad, got a little emotional at the time. And I said, I think we're dealing with something a little bit bigger than what we initially thought. So I want to preface that and talk to you about it. Then we got the scans back and found out I got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so we started to kind of go through that whole process.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you got that diagnosis? Do you remember? I mean, I'm assuming it's over the phone. Did they call you, or did they call you into the office when you got that result back? Do you have a hard time remembering what you did that day?
A little bit. I mean, there was so much going on.
Yeah.
I remember that interaction with him. We had the results, and then we did come in. At the time, I was dating a woman. She came in with me, and we got the final diagnosis of, hey, this is what it is. And we had Skyped in my parents. So I said, hey, we don't know exactly what it is yet, so please don't come. I was living in Chicago at the time, and got delivered. But I had mentally prepared myself when he said it was serious that could be it, and as well as looking at symptoms on the side. I kind of had an idea that it could be non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or leukemia. And so when he told me it was Hodgkin's lymphoma, I was kind of, I felt pretty good about it, to be honest with you, because I knew the survival rate.
Right.
I knew that you could recover from it and be fine the rest of your life. Some of the other ones are a little bit more potent, so I was thankful almost that it wasn't anything more serious, which is kind of weird to think about. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess if you had to pick one, I mean, that's not the worst one, I guess.
Exactly.
God, so how does that news that has to just throw everything into chaos, I feel like, or almost does it, because it sounds like you were doing your own sort of research and you kind of had this idea, but I guess it's different when you say, oh, I could have this, this, and this, because I don't know, have you had a serious illness before in your life?
No, like completely clean,
right.
Healthy lifestyle, no broken limbs. I mean, perfect.
Yeah.
And then there's that. So I would say that was kind of the kick to the mouth, if you will, of hey, wow, like we're gonna be dealing with something here that I never have. So it was a little bit of unknown. But then again, I had mentally prepared myself to where it's like, hey, this is the next challenge. Let's attack and beat it.
Wow.
Yeah, get the right doctors on board and figure out what we need to do and just attack the plan.
Right. So was there ever, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this, was there ever like a moment of just like almost disbelief when you heard that? Was there like this almost disassociative sort of like, it didn't really feel like he was saying those words to you, almost like it was like they were at you, but not necessarily having to do with you, to have this sort of disease?
Not me so much.
Yeah.
Where it's like, why me or why this? I think other people had more of a problem wrapping their head around it. Like this healthy kid that's full of positivity, like the last person we would ever think would get sick, watches what he eats and drinks, and then boom, like. But I never looked at it that way. I just kind of look, I think I talked to you a little bit about my faith, and I've got a strong faith. So for me, it was like, hey, this is God's plan for me.
Right.
And I'm a big believer that, He has orchestrated this divine plan this is part of it, and he's going to use me to hopefully build other people out and empower them through difficult times or whatever they might be dealing with.
So there was never a point where you thought, obviously the danger was there and it was very real, but was there ever a point where you thought, there could be a chance that I pass away from this? Or is there more of like, hey, this is me going forward, that I'm going to fight and beat this and overcome this?
Yeah, that was my thought process, and that's kind of how my whole family is. It's like we're not negative thinkers. It's all very positive thinking, and then when you're right with God, like there's nothing to fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a good feeling, and I knew I had a gut instinct that this was gonna challenge me, and I was gonna get through it and be able to help people, and I just had that from like day one. I didn't question it. It was just like it was very clear. So it was just God speaking to me, I guess. I was like, dude,
wow.
it's gonna be fine. I'm here. Let's roll with it and see what happens. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was doing some research leading up to this, and I, visited a few different cancer forums and just people talking about their own dealings with this sort of stuff. And I noticed that there was this common thread of almost like, and maybe it sounds like it wasn't like that for you, which is really interesting to me, but there was this common thread of almost like this almost crisis of faith happening with at least some of anecdotally, the ones that I've seen. This almost crisis of faith within the first, few months of kind of realizing that this is something that is serious, that could be life-altering, that is, a huge battle to have to fight, and how people kind of got through that. But then a reemergence of faith kind of after that sort of point. It's an interesting phenomenon that, I just observed, but was there ever a point where you were kind of just questioning that sort of stuff, like in general existentially sort of questioning that, or were you just, like you were saying, just sort of narrow focus, like this is his plan for me, this is God's plan for me, and I'm going to overcome this and be a beacon of inspiration and hope to other people?
Yeah, I would say I had that narrowed focus throughout it. I would say it continued to get stronger and stronger. Like I've always been a man of faith, right? And there's times where I've been a little further from it than I'd like, and then times I've gotten close to it. So I got closer and closer and closer, and then coming out of it, I've grown even more. So it's been a very good, faithful experience for me. And just you lose your health. Like you don't have, your health is so important, right? When you lose that, it's like what do you have? And so having that vertical relationship with God, knowing that He's there, it just draws you closer, every challenge or obstacle that you have. So I was able to kind of grab a hold of that, and then Him carry me through it, and then maintain that. I've been very fortunate.
So after you got that diagnosis, talk to me a little bit kind of what those next few weeks were like. I mean, just going through that with your family. Did you tell everyone? I mean, I know you Skyped in your parents and that sort of stuff, but I mean, was there a debate on who to tell? Was there any sort of like, hey, I'm going to just be out with it, let everyone know? Or was it more along the lines of, I want to keep this selective towards, different people that I want in my life that know about this stuff? Because I feel like, at least to me, I would perceive that almost as, in a way, it's almost a vulnerable sort of thing where you're like, I have this serious disease. And, for someone who doesn't have that sort of background, when that was your first kind of illness or whatnot, I mean, was that hard for you to sort of wrap your head around, like rationalize that sort of stuff almost?
It was. I'm not one to like immediately have a feling and publish it. I'm a little bit more reserved in that. But I know that there are people who are that, and I don't judge them for it. But I like to keep it to a close group of friends that I have that I grew up with, so I kind of let them know, and obviously let my manager and just a few people from work know. I didn't want like an influx of messages or people to feel bad about it. I just kind of wanted to roll with a tight-knit group that I stayed close to, and my family, my close group of friends, and then some people from work. But man, the first month or two was tough because there's just so much going on. You get diagnosed, and then they had to they wanted to find out what stage it was, right? So they took a lymph node out of my neck. So I had that procedure done, and then I got a port put in, right, to get chemo to draw in faster and quicker. So I got a port put in my chest.
Okay.
So I had those two procedures right away, and I had never had a procedure prior to that. So it was all just kind of new to me. It was hard to really wrap my head around stuff. And then they set me up with a fertility doctor. So here I am, like 2 months. The doctor's telling me that it could be stress, and then I'm in a room with a fertility doctor, basically saying, "Hey, you may never be able to have kids again based on your treatment patterns. If things get worse, we may have to up it. So would you like to, give us your sperm and we can store it?" I think they said in Minnesota for like $100 a month for a certain time. They were kind of laying out a payment plan, and I'm like, this is a
Jesus
lot.
Christ,
Yeah, this is kind of a lot to think about. And then you're going through, you're starting chemo. I got emergency admitted to chemo because my health was declining so bad. Right, I told you I had the night sweats. I was losing iron in my leg. I mean, my health was a major concern. So I got admitted to my first chemo in the middle of the night at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, and barely remember it. I was on a lot of drugs. My mom and dad drove up, and they were a part of it all. But then then you're setting up appointments with the doctor. Right, what's your medicine that you're supposed to be taking? And they're constantly messing with the recipe, what medicines work, what don't. So you're trying to figure that out. And you've got people reaching out. So it's just, there's so much communication and paperwork and meetings that you never thought that you'd ever end up into. And it's pretty chaotic. So I guess it was hard to find time to be present in the moment and have that relationship with God. But I was able to find some of that amidst the chaos. And the first 2 months was a lot, and then you kind of start to settle into it, just like anything that's difficult in life.
So, I guess maybe expand a little bit upon what it was like just dealing with that sort of chaos. Because what kind of, you mentioned you had to go to a lot of meetings, appointments. I mean, as someone who doesn't really have that sort of perspective that you might have, what is it like to just deal with that? Like, what goes into that whirlwind of managing appointments and all that sort of stuff? Does it come at you a lot? Because like you were saying, because with you going from 2 months ago thinking it was a stress-related thing to then discussing if you'll ever be able to father kids again. That's such a, that's so crazy. That's
totally, it was. I mean, it was a lot to take ownership of, to be honest with you. And I spoke to my mom about this. And I think I lacked a little bit of that ownership at the beginning. Like, man, this is a lot. Like, I need some people to take some of this off of me. Kind of like schedule the appointments. And figure out the medicine and write some of this down. It's not that it was too much for me. I was able to handle it, but I just kind of need to pass some things off and delegate some things from the start. And then as time got on, I really took ownership of the medicine, the plan, the appointments. And I took it as a challenge and something that I needed to stay on top of. And okay, let's get this. Let's do it. And there's like a list of tasks and just knock it off. Okay, I did this. I knocked that chemo. I got 6 more. No, I got 5 more. I got 4 more. So that was a little bit of my mindset in that.
That's crazy. So what was it like going through just looking at all these treatment plans? Did you have a definitive treatment plan, lined up from the get-go, but like you said, they were sort of changing around some of the medications or whatnot? Did you have fears of treatments, of maybe the side effects? Did you have any kind of, intrusive thoughts almost with just is there a different way to go about this, or do I kind of dive full into the medical? Because I know you're very spiritual.
Yeah. It all happened so fast. I never thought of an alternative method to chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. We moved right into it and started it, and I can tell you what, I don't wish that upon anybody. I hope long term that isn't the route. I mean, it's poison that they're putting in your system, and you can feel it right away. And it's brutal. I mean, leading up to every one, I definitely wasn't excited about it, but I knew that after each one, I was going to have one less more. So that was my perspective, and then I also kind of changed my mindset, and this is actually going to help me. This is going to kill it, right? So I had to kind of change that of, hey, I'm not going to feel awful going into this, even though I am. It's going to help me, right? I have the opportunity to get chemotherapy. Some people get sick and they don't, and they can never recover from maybe a country or they can't afford it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You mentioned a lot, and I find it very admirable, of this stalwart, unflinching, unwavering resolve, of this positive mindset. And I know that there are a lot of researchers and doctors that believe firmly that that is a huge component of any kind of successful recovery from cancer. I mean, how do you think that your never say die attitude really helped you? I mean, was that instrumental? Was it?
It's big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have that mindset, and most people that beat it do. So I read a book after the fact that somebody recommended me called Radical Remission. Anyway, they study these people that have had radical remissions, right? All the odds were against them for surviving. And there was 9 characteristics or traits that they all shared that just, there may have been a 5% chance of them living. And one of the characteristics is that, right? The resolve, the positive mindset that this isn't going to beat me. And I had that from day one. It's always been instilled in me, and I'm glad that I didn't really fight that too much.
It's incredible, and I think that's something that people maybe overlook, because when you're faced with these incredible odds against you, I don't think anyone would blame you for feeling overwhelmed and just so almost defeatist initially. But you're right. I mean, that's not the way to kind of go about doing that. I mean, that's it doesn't do you any favors, for sure.
No, and I'm one, like, whatever I'm going through, or if somebody else is going through, I like to do some research and due diligence on, hey, how do I beat this? So when I found out I had it, there was people sending me books, and I was reading them. Like, what's the best way of going about this? So I don't necessarily want to like look back and say I could have done it differently, and find out how people succeeded. And I do that in all aspects of my life, and I did it with that, and it definitely helped me.
So would you say that, well, I guess I may be jumping ahead a little bit too much here, because let's go back a little bit to, you're a few months into treatment, you're going through that sort of stuff. Was there any major moment that you felt was a specific turning point for you, where you started to maybe, not that you ever doubted there was a light at the end of the tunnel, but like you started to see that within, arm's reach?
So it may have been my 4th or 5th treatment. There was 12. I got the news that I was in remission, which was awesome. I was super excited. But to be honest with you, the worst part about it all is the chemo treatment. And I had to finish out the treatment, so the rest of it. So I was like I wasn't even halfway done. And I had to do like another 3 or 4 months of treatment after they tell me that it was gone.
Why was that?
That's just how they do it. It's almost like getting prescribed like an antibiotic, right? Mm-hmm. They want you to finish out the rest of your prescription, and that's what they told me. So I listened to it, and that's what they've always done. Huh. So when I heard that news, that was obviously like, it was great. We're heading in the right direction. What I'm doing is working. The doctors have done what they can, and now it's just about finishing this out and dealing with all the symptoms and medicines of the chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. So I saw a light at the end of the tunnel there. That was great.
Do you remember who'd you tell to begin with? I mean, when you got that news it was in remission, what was it like telling your friends and your family about that?
It was cool. I remember taking the call at work. I mean, when there's these big moments in your life, you kind of go back. Yeah, where you were and what you said.
Yeah.
That one I won't forget. It was, I think it may have been 5:30 or 6. So I continued to work through it all, and I took a call from the doc in a conference room by myself. And obviously they were ecstatic, and I was like, I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless. This is great. Thank you. But they told me that I had to kind of continue treatment. So that in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's not done yet. Yeah. Like it could pop back up. The treatment's the hardest part. Like the mission's not done, but it's positive news, and I'm very hopeful. So I hung up the phone, and I think I walked out and told my boss, and he was excited, gave me a hug, and then I called my mom and dad. And obviously they were extremely emotional. Like I didn't cry or anything, but it was a special moment. And then it was kind of funny timing when 2 days after I received the news, my sister was getting married. No kidding. So, my dad gave a speech, and he had like a little excerpt in there about us receiving good news. So I was able to really celebrate that with everybody that I cared about. which is kind of funny. How, God's timing and all that was pretty cool.
That's serendipitous.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was neat.
So, you touched briefly a bit on, so obviously there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but then you still had these, 8 more treatments left? You said?
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it was like treatment 4 or 5. Yeah, I mean, there was still a significant amount of work that needed to be done.
So can you talk a little bit more about actually what that experience of like going and doing chemo is like? Because I always hear about it, and I haven't known anyone that like I've actually seen them go through chemo. I always hear about it. So what's that experience like? What do they do to you? I mean, is it?
Did you have to bring that up? I'm joking. I prefer not to talk. No, I'm kidding. It's tough. Yeah, you go in there, you get your blood work, and then they determine if you're ready for chemo or not, because your blood cells are a constant up and down, and you need to be at a certain level. And that's another thing about the whole process with chemo. You have to have hand sanitizer because you're just prone to getting sick. Mm-hmm. So you go in there, you get your blood work, they come out, and then they hook your port up so you can take the chemo faster. And then you go in your room, and I think I was doing those on Thursdays every 2 weeks. And I'd get in around, 7:30, 8 in the morning. And then I would leave. I think things would wrap up around probably 12:30 or 1, maybe a little later. So it was probably a solid, 5-6 hours from start to finish. The nurse really manages that in the hospital. Gives you some medicine so you don't get sick and throw up from the get-go. So that's like a 30-minute to an hour process. And then I was doing this ABVD treatment, and each letter stands for a certain medicine. I forget what the name of them are. They're super complicated and long. But nonetheless, one of them, I think it's the second or third one, it's red. And so you end up peeing out red, like middle through your treatment. So it's kind of a different feeling. A girl that I worked with had the same cancer, so it was nice to have her as a resource, but she said that her friend was always trying to bump her and like pull up funny stuff to make her laugh so she could cry out red.
Oh my God.
She said it happened once. So nobody ever did that to me, but that was kind of a unique experience. Mm-hmm. And so the doctor's back and forth talking about your medicine. Hey, what worked last time? What didn't? What are some of the symptoms? The doctor might drop in, and so it's 3 or 4 hours of just sitting there basically in a chair. I would read. My mom would come up from Fort Wayne almost for every single one and be there for me. Sometimes I'd make phone calls or Skype people. And, it was 4 or 5 hours, and then I was so exhausted. I mean, you're like bloated of drugs and poison that you feel completely terrible. And so I'd go back to my apartment, and I'd just sleep kind of the rest of the day and then work the next day. The next day I would work from home just because of how I felt, and then I'd be in the office. And the thing is with treatment is you have that treatment, and then as you ease your way into your next one, you just start to feel good again. Oh. You know what I mean? So you feel like the worst days are those beginning days, mm-hmm. and then as that second, the next one, that 2 weeks is up, you really almost start to feel like 100%. At the time, you feel like you're close to 100, but it's really like 60.
Yeah.
When we're actually all the way through it, and you feel great. But like those 2 days leading up to the next one, you just try to enjoy, because it's like, man, I'm at 60%. Like, I might go for a fast walk, or I might eat you were getting like your appetite back. That's another side effect that you have to battle through the whole time. So yeah, I'd always plan if I was gonna go out to eat or have a meal, I'd always plan that like the day before or like the morning of, I'd have my treatment.
Gosh, so right when you're feeling better.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, tomorrow you gotta
get punched in the mouth again. Yeah, so be ready. Let's go.
God. That's incredible that you've gone through that. So what do you think, after you kind of finished your last bit of chemo, I guess that was almost the finale of that. Like did it put like a neat sort of bow on the whole experience, so to speak, where it's like, okay, it's in remission. It's been in remission the past 6 times I've done chemo, but now I'm done with chemo. They're giving me the all clear sign.
Exactly. Yeah, we're in good shape. I mean, that was the mindset. 11-9, man. I won't forget it. That was it was a struggle through the process, living in the moment, because it's hard not to think about that last one. Like, just get me there, and then you're there. It was a special moment. My mom and dad came for it, and my mom had like this big charity event the day of, and I think she had mentioned like, hey, my whole family's trying to make it possibly, and then she's like, hey, your dad and I are just coming. And I was like, no, that's cool. I mean, I'll knock it out, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. And so I got in the room, and then all of a sudden I started hearing like this country song in the hallway. It was one of my favorite ones. I think it was by Zach Brown Band, Toes in the Water. And then my whole family surprised me and came in, which was like super cool with like a poster. And it was really neat, and put like a bow on the whole thing. And, we got a big hug and a picture taken. And I was like, this is what life's all about, right? And they surprised me. My mom had that big thing that night, and we had a family friend offer their private plane to fly my whole family because she needed a quick turnaround to run this event. I mean, she spends the whole year planning it, and it was that day. So it needed to be a kind of a quick in and out.
Right.
So we were just so fortunate and blessed for them to offer that up and allow my family to come in and do that and put a bow on it all. And then, they had to take off right away. And I think my dad stuck around a little bit later that day, and then I probably felt like, I don't know, maybe 60, 70% there, 2 or 3 weeks after. And then it took a while for me to get back to myself, right? I lost, at one point I got down to 175, and I'm about 210, 215 normally. I lost my eyebrows. I lost my eyelashes. So I look like a scary dude, man. I mean, I wasn't anybody you wanted to look at. I had no hair, right? I lost. And that was kind of a challenge in itself, like wanting to show myself a little bit because, everybody looked at me as like this strong guy. Then all of a sudden I was kind of this weak guy, like I didn't look as strong as I used to, and I was struggling. So that was kind of hard for me to kind of get out all the time. I kind of hid from people, especially at the get-go. And then I realized, hey, I need people to be around. That's what's going to give me life.
What was it like being almost... Because that part resonates with me a little bit, where, I've throughout my life I've had different challenges and obstacles to overcome, and historically I've done kind of a poor job at letting other people in to help, almost in a way, where I am used to being the rock, almost, where like people come to me.
Yeah.
And they see me, what I perceive, they see me as a certain way. So when I feel like I don't want to, burden is too strong of a word, but I don't feel like I want to, bog them down with my own problems. Were you sort of similar in that?
Exactly, yeah.
I feel like, that lesson, I guess, in humility and just kind of realizing, how many people care about you and want you to succeed and be happy, and learning that it's okay to depend on other people is something that, it's really fantastic you had that experience. Like,
yeah, I mean, I ran with it from the get-go. I'm like, hey, I'm going to kind of run on this, and I guess that's kind of comes natural to me, or that's my mindset sometimes. It's like, hey, this is a challenge. I can take it all on my own. But listen, you can't. Nobody does it alone. You hear any success story in business or life, it takes letting other people into your world, being vulnerable and telling them how you feel. And then, obviously having that relationship with God. So the combination of all of it, was fruitful in my whole recovery.
So when you got this, it is kind of a new lease on life. In the following months and weeks, what changed? Did you have, like, say, like a hobby or a pastime you used to always want to do that made you decide to kind of go out and pursue it more aggressively? Relationships, did those change? You mentioned earlier at the start of this that you were more adamant about your physical health, so to speak. I mean, what was different with Mitch now that he is, cancer-free? I mean, what's his life like?
It's a good question, and it's something I've been thinking about and have since I came out of it. And there's been a lot that's changed with me. You can't have this big experience in your life and it just not. You know what I mean? So I guess I'll elaborate on some things that have changed. I think one is gratitude. I'm very thankful for each day that I've been given, because you never know when there's that percent that comes into your life where, it's not 100% that you're going to live that day. So gratitude's important to me, and I'm very thankful for the people that are in my life and the day and everything that I've been given. So that's definitely I'm more grateful. Two, I'm more empathetic, right? Understanding of what people are going through. Before that, I hadn't gone through any type of health scare, right? Like maybe get sick once every couple of years possibly. And so I can understand just not only the physical battle it is, but it's a mind game when you're going through something like that. It can tear you up. You can get all types of thoughts that go through your head. So God's brought people in my life since I've come out of it that I've been able to help, and I have in a way been that guy that people come to, but since I've been more intentional about praying about it and seeking it out, and people seeking me out, it's been awesome. Just being able to have more conversations about people going through like sickness that have entered my life. So that's been kind of cool. I'm trying to think a couple other things that have come out of it. I think that there's a lot on the other end of suffering is a lifetime full of joy and happiness. Takes a mature mindset to think that way, but man, I mean, I've come out a better person. My perspective on life's changed. I've told you a little bit that I'm focusing more on wellness and fitness and reading more about how to not get it again. Not that they can pinpoint why I got it, but I want to do anything in my power so that I don't get it again.
Right.
So I've gotten a little bit deeper into that, and I'm trying to think.
Is preventing that preventing you from getting that again? How do you do that? Is that diet, or is that lifestyle decisions, or what you can do to help kind of hedge your bet, so to speak? I guess.
Yeah, I think we all have kind of a general consensus of what hurts us, physically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like excessive drugs and alcohol. So I do a good job of not getting. I don't get into any drugs, and I don't. I rarely drink.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I will. So and then as far as eating the right foods, right, sugar kind of feeds cancer. So I try to stay away from sugar as much as I can. Now I do have some, daily, but I try to watch that intake. So, and then physical exercise, right? Moving around, not sitting. Those are just several things that'll help, prevent you from getting sick. I also believe in stress is very detrimental to your health, as you know, and sometimes it's hard to control. Mm-hmm. But anytime you can look at your life or your day and say, how can I take that out? Obviously, we talked about it from the get-go of physical exercise. Like, it clears your mind. Yeah. So I'll work out twice a day for like a short period of time just to clear my mind in any type of stress, right? Purge it out. So that, that helps. Clearing that out. Prayer, to me, when I'm intentional about prayer and my relationship with God, like, I'm not thinking about anything else. So I've kind of got some alone time, like a gratitude journal, thanking God for what I've been given that day. So anything that I'll read in a book of like what can clear your mind and take away stress, I try to do on a daily basis. And I think a lot of times stress can lead to sickness. It attacks your immune system when you're stressed, and ultimately, your immune system's in your gut, right? When you're stressed, you feel tenseness in your stomach, and it can be bad for your health. So anybody that's listening to this, try to avoid stress as much as you can. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, that actually kind of brings me to one of my final questions is, if someone listening to this, was diagnosed with cancer, say they were diagnosed, they received the news yesterday or whatnot, and they're typing in on YouTube, related videos or whatnot, trying to go through and find like-minded people in that sort of struggle, what kind of advice or words of wisdom would you have to offer to them?
It's a real good question. So about 3 months ago, I had a fraternity brother reach out to me, and we hadn't spoke in maybe a year. We had possibly run into each other. Awesome guy. He called me on a Friday afternoon, and I'm like, man, I got a missed call from him. I was like, I'm going to give him a call back. There could be something that's going on. I gave him a call. He goes, hey, man, I want to tell you something. I just got diagnosed with the same thing you had. I said, no way. And so I smiled. I don't know he obviously didn't see it and doesn't know about it, but I kind of smiled and I said, when you see what's on the other end of this, it's going to be this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you. And I don't know if that was the right thing to say, because it's like he just got this news, like his mind can't go like, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me, but like he knows I went through it.
Yeah.
And he's a believer. And what it's done for me in my relationships and whole mindset after the fact, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I wanted to let him know that from anything that breaks you down in life, it's going to help you in the future. And you've seen that probably, in your life, and maybe not to this extent, or maybe it's been more. But when you see that joy and happiness on the other end of suffering, I delivered that to him, and now he's getting towards the end. I would say he's 3/4 of the way done.
Wow.
And he has a big scan tomorrow. So if you've got a prayer for life, anybody listening, pray for him. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he gets gets in remission and resolves the whole thing. But that was kind of my advice, or kind of what first came to mind and what I told him about. So he'll soon, in 2 or 3 months, be able to kind of see what it all, you kind of get this this youthful joy about you, right, coming out of it. You want to be a kid again because you don't have any energy throughout it, right? You're kind of like,
right, okay.
It's wearing on you. You're tired all the time. You're not yourself. And so he's going to be himself again, and he's going to be running around, playing around. Probably his wife's going to be yelling at him just like she does with his other kids. So, I mean, it's going to be good.
That attitude, that mindset, I've seen it reflected to me in other aspects of my life, but never at something that so many people view as such a huge challenge. And that is so admirable, that you have that strong-willed, like deterministic mindset about that. So much so that when you get a friend calling you up about that, you're like, this is going to be great when you beat it. Like that. That's so kick-ass. I mean, that's really, it's infectious, and that says a lot, I think, about your character and who you are, as a man. And I think that's really admirable.
Yeah,
it's really fantastic. I had a few more questions here. Let's see. This will be the last one because we're running a little over on time here. But in general, say, for example, you know someone who maybe is going through something similar to this, and when you were going through that, what would you want your friends and family to say? Like, how would you want them to support you? Because I think with some people who live maybe more sheltered lives, like even myself, who has not had cancer touch, my immediate family. I'm not going to say my family, but like my immediate family in that sort of way yet. What is the right way to support someone going through that? And what would you have appreciated, I guess, if that makes sense?
There's a lot of people that have reached out to me after the fact or in a conversation just said, I didn't know what to do or say, and never did, and regret it. So I don't instruct that whatsoever. Anytime that you want to do something great for somebody, do it. Whether it's a text message or call, nobody's ever going to get mad at you for saying, listen, I'm thinking of you, or if you're a faithful person, I'm praying for you. It never hurts. So anybody that's listening, if you have somebody sick or anybody that's going through, if it's depression, anything, sending them a note, letting them know that you're thinking of them is it's selfless, it's sacrificial, and people appreciate that. So that would be my instruction to anybody. And also, I think people are always looking for this right time, and they want to coordinate something. Like, when can I run dinner over? When can we schedule a lunch? And it kind of becomes like a logistical nightmare, and it becomes like something for somebody to think about when they already have so much to think about with kids, sickness, what have you. Yeah. So sometimes just do things on a whim. Like, if you want to make dinner for them, just don't ask them if they want you to make dinner for them. They probably won't even respond, or they'll say no because they feel like they're an inconvenience. Just go do it. Right? Make dinner and put it on their front door and write a note, and they'll find it. Like, make it easy for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Send them flowers. Send them a book. I send a lot of people that I know are going through things letters. I'm big into writing letters, so I do that on a weekly basis. A lot of people did that to me, and that was nice to just not not being able to like feel the call or kind of being perfect, but just kind of like cherish it for what it is. Not feel the need to respond right away. Right when somebody texts you, you feel like you have to respond right away. But letters are kind of it's an old snail mail. It's an old way of communication, but it's also it's unique, and it was definitely appreciated on my end when people did it. There was my brother-in-law's mom did it for me every week from start to finish.
Okay.
And I'll never forget that. It was something special. I mean, handwritten.
Man.
And it was special. She's a special lady.
That's a good point that you bring up, because I think, and I'm very guilty of this too, I think a lot of times we have this kind of concept where whether we realize it or not, where like perfect is like the enemy of good, where it's like we try and find the right time, the right situation, the right thing to say, and sometimes in being so caught up and obsessed with finding that perfection, that perfect time or moment to do it, we don't do it at all.
It's never the perfect time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is really interesting, how you had that influx of people reach out to you after the fact and saying, I wish I could have said this, and I wish I could have been, like, just voiced my support. I just didn't know what to say. Or I didn't know, if it was the right time or whatnot, and I regret it. And I think that that's something that, if before coming here and talking with you, I think if I had that coming up in my life, if I had a loved one that was going through something like that, I think that, or a friend even that I hadn't talked to in, a year or two, I might be guilty of that exact same thing, because it's such a weird taboo almost thing in our society, I feel like.
And nobody's going to think, and you may initially think that, they think I'm reaching out only because I'm sick, because I haven't heard from them in a while, but they're not. Every person is appreciative for that you thought at a point in your day, you thought of them and sent them a note. You took time out of your day. And, I try to do that, and people did it for me. So, yeah, for all the listeners out there, don't think too much about it. If you got something good that you want to do for somebody, blast it out. You'll never regret it, man. You can't live in regret.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. I would like to have you back on at some point, because I imagine we'll probably get a few people writing in to maybe just with questions or whatnot, if you're comfortable with that. We can work out the logistics of it some other time. But if you do have questions for Mitch in general, you can write in to contact@thedigitalfireside.com. That's contact@thedigitalfireside.com. And as of Friday, we are now on iTunes and
awesome.
on Spotify. Yeah, this was honestly a really powerful time to talk with you, man. I am very thankful and privileged that you decided to come on, and I'm really grateful for it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for bringing me on. Like I said, this is the first time of me doing something like this. Whenever I can have the opportunity to help out, really tell my story, and hopefully it speaks to some of the listeners and yourself. I'm honored to be a part of the show. It's cool what you've done thus far, and then what you're going to continue to do, man. I'll support the show, and this was great being on and talking to you.
Mitch, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, yes, sir.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time out of your day to rate us on iTunes. I know, it's a hassle, but it really does help our production. Getting rated and reviewed helps us get indexed in their search engine and is useful for Apple Analytics. Again, I know it's a lot to ask, but thank you so much again, and I will see you guys next time.